Today on the Frontline Health Podcast.
That most of us don't realize that chronic heat stress is incredibly inflammatory to our body. It's going to raise the cortisol level, which we know messes with our blood sugar, our blood pressure, and even our immune health and the balance that we're trying to get. So, if you can give your body support and tools to help handle that inflammation, like with turmeric and NAC and quercetin, then those can be huge opportunities to help sustain your health during the summer months and when heat is really an issue.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Frontline Health Podcast by Centurion, where we help you take ownership of your health with health news, tips, and insights. I'm your host, Evan Patrick, and I'm joined today, as always, by our founder and CEO, Mr. Troy Duell. Troy, how's it going today?
Good, man. It is definitely summer. We hit about 98 degrees this week. So it is getting hot and hotter and even more humid. So no joke, but excited to talk a little bit about some of the heat.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're talking about today, how to stay healthy in the summer heat. So whether you're working outside, traveling, or just trying to keep up with your workouts, that heat can take a toll on your body in more ways than people realize.
Absolutely. It's not just about being sweaty and uncomfortable either, because we know that heat really affects your hydration, it affects your cardiovascular function, your mental clarity, and it affects your immune system. So it's something that we've got to be very cognizant of because it can lead to some serious health conditions and risk, especially if you're talking about kids or older adults or anybody who has some kind of underlying medical condition.
Mhm. We're going to cover some practical ways to protect yourself, how your body responds to heat, and we'll share some of our own routines and hacks too. So, Troy, kick us off. What's something that most people don't realize about how their body handles heat?
I think the first thing is really talking about dehydration. We know that we lose water through sweat, but we also lose those essential electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. And by the time you feel thirsty, after you've lost those electrolytes and all that water, you're already about 1 to 2% dehydrated. And that can cause what we know headaches, fatigues, and even reduced physical performance. I think we've all been there where we've been out working in the yard or running or doing something in high heat, and all of a sudden we just hit a wall because we've become dehydrated.
Yep. And that's not just for athletes. Even walking your dog in the middle of the day can stress your system, which I'm told you're not supposed to do that anyways. Some
That's
people will
right.
jump on you for walking your dog in the heat of the day. But I digress. One study found that heat exposure can reduce cognitive performance by up to 13%, especially in children and teens during school or camp. So it's not just about heat stroke, it's brain fog, mood, sleep quality, all of it.
That's right. And we know that because our body tries to cool itself by sweating, it also lowers our blood volume because it means our heart work has to work harder because the blood becomes thicker. You are losing uh, hydration, you're losing liquids, and your blood becomes thicker, and it makes it harder for your heart to pump that, which then leads to you feeling lightheaded and maybe a little less energetic than you were when you started.
I had that just this weekend doing some yard work. You come inside and you just feel dizzy for a second. So probably low on electrolytes and a little bit dehydrated.
That's right. It's not just about water. I think you hit a key point there. It's about electrolytes. I went out a couple weeks ago, was working in the yard and got extremely hot. I was drinking plenty of water, but I started to feel really lightheaded and dizzy because I wasn't taking in those electrolytes that I needed to really recharge my body and make sure that I was getting the minerals in order to keep my blood pressure up and really stay fully hydrated because those cells can start to break down if you don't have the electrolytes to make that happen.
hmm And do you have any personal rules or routines that you go to for your hydration, particularly in the summer?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I try to limit myself to if it's really, really hot, to 30 minutes to an hour, and I'm making sure that I'm drinking 12 ounces of water during that 30 minutes to an hour, and then making sure that if I'm outside for that whole period of time, it's not just about drinking water, but then it's taking some type of cold fruit because it's hot. So I like a cold apple or cold watermelon, something like that, that is really, really refreshing to take in, and it has the electrolytes that your body needs. So that's what I typically do.
Hmm. Yeah, I always try to start my day by drinking some water. If it's particularly hot, I'll use an electrolyte powder as well, just to get some sodium and potassium in my system. Because I know I've been losing more when it's as hot as it has been lately outside. And I might be blowing smoke, but I'm told that our Just Energy powder could be helpful for this too because of the taurine and the B vitamins.
Absolutely. That will certainly help because it's the vitamins and the electrolytes and minerals that you need that are all in there. What you really want to be looking at is just making sure that you're not taking in too much sugar or artificial junk that are typically in the Gatorades and some of the Powerades. So making sure that whenever you're going to the restroom and you're peeing, that if it's totally clear all the time, you're probably overhydrated and losing minerals, but you want to make sure that it's kind of that golden yellow that you're looking for and not a dark yellow because that means that you are lacking a lot of hydration.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You mentioned that overhydration, and it's not likely that most of us will get to that point, especially if you live in a hot climate. But I do know actually a mutual friend of ours who served overseas in the military, and he actually passed out from overhydration in the Middle East, which is hard to imagine how you could drink that much water. And that's taking being proactive about your hydration very, very seriously. For most of us, that's probably not going to be the issue. It's probably going to be the other way around. But
Absolutely.
it is one of those weird hydration myths. People think that more water equals healthier, but if you're not balancing it out with electrolytes, you're just flushing out those nutrients that your body also needs to stay well hydrated.
That is absolutely true. So you've got to be careful and really pay attention and be cognizant of what's going on with your body. And when you go to the bathroom, take a look, make sure that you're not overly hydrated, but you're not underhydrated as well, and get that golden urine that you're looking for.
I like it. The golden urine. That's what we want. So we've covered internal hydration, but let's shift gears and let's talk about something that hits all of us pasty white people in particular, but can affect everyone of all skin tones. Think that's an important thing to add is sunburns.
Yeah, I'm very well aware of sun damage and sunburns because I've had plenty of skin cancers taken off. So it's one of those things that you definitely have to be aware of. But you can't avoid the sun either because it has so many benefits for
Hmm.
us from the standpoint of health. Typically, the best way to do that is from 10 to 4. That's when the sun is going to be the most fierce and you're going to take in the most UV radiation. So you want to minimize your time and exposure between 10 and 4 and really work out in the yard from 8 to 10 or those early morning hours and the late afternoon hours. Besides the fact it's also going to be a little bit more comfortable, so it's not as hot. And typically, you're going to probably perform better when you're outside during those times anyway, because we know that UV radiation not only causes potentially can cause skin cancer, but it's going to accelerate kind of the aging process, and it can even suppress your immune system if you get too much of it. So you want to be careful.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point there that the sun is actually good for us too. We have to be careful with it, but I like to give my wife a hard time sometimes because she always knows what the UV index is. No matter what is going on, that's a guarantee she's gonna know what the UV index is. And I'm like, sometimes it's good, just for 30 minutes, just go out in the sun, no
That's right.
sunscreen, nothing like that, just for a short amount of time to let your body kind of absorb the benefits that it gets from the sun as well. But as you mentioned, you definitely have to be careful because too much UV radiation can be detrimental to your health. So, something that some
Absolutely.
people don't realize, sunburn is actually an inflammatory injury. It triggers your body's immune response, releasing cytokines, increasing oxidative stress, and draining nutrients like vitamin C and glutathione.
Yeah, it really is kind of interesting. And I know that as a kid, when I got too much sun, I would get nauseated. Oftentimes I would vomit because I had too much sun. But you also have that painful reaction. It's not real fun to get slapped on the back when you've had a sunburn because you just bristle when anybody starts to come by. So yes, you can have that flu-like symptoms. You can start to feel very, very fatigued. Oftentimes, if you've gotten too much sun, you're pretty much wiped out at the end of a day. Probably twofold because you've gotten too much sun and you've probably been exposed to too much heat, which we've talked about on previous podcasts. But you have to remember your body is really working overtime to recover from that trauma that's happened from getting too much sun. So give it some time and really don't expect too much if you've gone out and gotten too much sun. So be sure to uh, limit that sun exposure by wearing the big hats. Be sure that you're using sunscreen. Make sure that it's not overly sunscreen that has too many chemicals in it, but has a zinc-based and more natural form of sunscreen, and then limit the time that you're out there so you're not getting too much sun.
hmm So the key really is balance. We've mentioned several of the benefits, but we know that about 10 to 20 minutes per day of sun exposure, depending on your skin tone, can help your body make vitamin D. So the key is balance. Avoid burning, nourish your skin afterward too, aloe, antioxidants, omega-3s, all those things to reduce inflammation, but be sure that you keep that balance in place.
Absolutely.
Let's pivot for just a second because I think most people don't realize that heat affects your sleep too.
Absolutely. It's something that we've talked about in the past. Sleep is an absolutely important part of our health. And we know that from studies that typically the best sleep happens when the temperature of your room is about 65 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit. So you want to make sure that you're keeping that temperature down, keeping the humidity down, and getting the best climate that you can in order to get the best rest possible.
So we know sleep is when your body does its repair work. So if your sleep quality drops, your immune system gets sluggish. That's why we recommend things like our Defender PM, which helps with both immune support and better sleep, thanks to ingredients like melatonin and turmeric.
Yeah, I think it's a great reminder that most of us don't realize that chronic heat stress is incredibly inflammatory to our body. It's going to raise the cortisol level, which we know messes with our blood sugar, our blood pressure, and even our immune health and the balance that we're trying to get. So, if you can give your body support and tools to help handle that inflammation, like with turmeric and NAC and quercetin, then those can be huge opportunities to help sustain your health during the summer months and when heat is really an issue.
Mhm. So let's talk real life. Any personal experiences with heat exhaustion or summer struggles where you have had to learn lessons the hard way, Troy?
Yeah, I think growing up, especially in the South, in Florida, it's hot on a regular basis. And if you're doing any sports or anything else and you're not hydrating or you're trying to push through a scenario where, hey, they're telling you, your coaches are telling you you need to push, you need to go harder, and then you just don't stop to get the water or you don't pay attention to that. There were plenty of times where I was lightheaded, uh, had mental fog and lack of capacity, which isn't real hard for me to do, but certainly was an issue. And the older I got, the more I understood why water breaks were super important and why making sure that you have the right electrolyte mix or having those orange slices or whatever it may be at halftime and other things are so important for your health to make sure that you can perform at the best possible level. And I didn't understand that as well as I probably should have at that age, but it was, I'm sure, a lot to do with the fact that our coaches didn't fully understand that. They were just trying to put in us the discipline and the drive to do the things that we needed to get done.
It's really funny to see how perspectives have changed on that. One of the lines that I laugh at now from the movie Remember the Titans is when Denzel Washington says, "Water makes you weak."
That's
because he's
right.
trying to, like you said, the toughness factor. He's trying to teach his guys, not to rely on that, but to find the mental toughness and grit to push through. And I can even remember like coaches, even I had when I was growing up, who said, "Water is your reward. If you do this drill right this time, if
That's
you,
right.
you know, if you do this in practice, then okay, then you can earn that water break." But now, like I know from having been a coach, you have to go through like trainings where you are certified saying, I know how to recognize the signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. I know how often I'm supposed to be giving my players breaks. And I mean, to be fair, like I've seen kids go down due to this dehydration and heat injuries. So definitely is something that's important. And but I'm glad that our perspective has changed, and there are other ways we can promote mental toughness.
Yeah, and I think some of that coincides with what we talk about a lot on this podcast, which is because we've gone more to processed foods and we're not using the whole foods that we typically have. Back in the day, I don't think they had to deal with some of the dehydration as much as they do now because we're all in air conditioned spaces. We're
Hmm.
all, most people are eating things or drinking things that don't truly bring the value that they need to. So it's even more imperative that people are taking these hydration breaks and making sure that they're maintaining their electrolyte levels because we're not used to the heat. Our bodies have not acclimated to it and we're not getting the food and the nutrition that we need in order to make it through those scenarios.
Hmm. So let's give a quick checklist for the people listening. What are the big things to look for with heat related issues?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest red flags you have out there are dizziness and lightheadedness. So if you're starting to get dizzy or lightheaded, certainly begin to take a step back and go, hey, am I getting the hydration that I need? Am I getting the electrolytes that I need? If you start to have a headache, your heart rate starts to increase. You're starting to get muscle cramps. You have any nausea or confusion, which some of us have confusion on a regular basis. So maybe not as big of a deal. Or if you stop sweating altogether, that's a big one because it's a sign that you're moving into the heat stroke status and you need to get to a place where you're in a cooler area. You're really trying to cool off the core of your body at that point and start with that by getting as safe as possible. Get in the shade and start hydrating with electrolytes, water, and maybe even some fruits and vegetables.
Hmm. And for dehydration prevention, here's a quick checklist of helpful tips. One, hydrate early and often. Two, like we've talked about, add minerals and those electrolytes, not just water. Three, wear light, breathable clothing. Four, exercise in the early morning or evening in those times of the day when it's not as hot. Five, sleep in a cool, dark room to help yourself get that sleep. There's nothing better than that.
Hmm.
Six, support your body with anti-inflammatory and immune supporting supplements that can help your response if you do face those issues. And then seven, protect your skin. Don't burn. Preaching to the choir for myself here, really. You got to wear those sunscreens for us, especially for us pasty white people.
Yes, very much so.
So whether you're training for a race, chasing kids around, or just trying to survive the summer, heat health is whole body health.
That's right. And keeping in mind that hydration, sleep, immune health, and brain function are all connected. And we've truly got to be smart about it. We've got to be proactive and think ahead. And if you do that, I think you will thrive and not just really survive these hot months that we have.
We hope this conversation helps you stay safe, strong, and sharp this summer. As always, visit www.centurion.health to shop the products we mentioned in this episode and others like Defender PM, Just Energy, Defender Immunity Boost, and so much more.
Take care of your body, and it will certainly help take care of you. So, thanks for tuning in. Remember to go out and take ownership of your health today because you are your best health advocate. So, thanks again for joining us on Frontline Health.
See you next time.
If you enjoyed what you heard today on the podcast, please consider leaving us a review. We would love to hear your feedback and connect with you further. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube. And for safe, effective, and affordable health and wellness products made in the USA, visit www.centurion.health. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.